heard of the Catacombs of Rome? Usually when we hear the word catacombs, we think of burial sites, we think of bones, like the catacombs in Paris. In ancient Rome, the Romans didn't bury their dead inside of the city walls. It was actually against the law. The wealthy were able to commission large mausoleums and other kinds of burial sites, but the not-so-wealthy were buried in the catacombs. Cremation was not really practiced at this time, and so people were buried intact. This was called inhumation. Today, in almost all of Rome's catacombs, there are no bones. But visiting the catacombs is a historic visit that allows us to see what life and death was like in ancient Rome. In Rome, we have quite a few sites that you might think of as catacombs, but they're not really catacombs so much as underground sites or other kinds of burial sites. On today's video, I'm going to be taking you with me to 3 different types of burial sites here in Rome. Only one of them is actually a catacomb. The other 2 sites are an underground of a church and the Capuchin Crypt, where you will definitely see bones. This video is actually part of a tour that I'm taking that covers all 3 of these sites, with transportation included between the sites. I'm linking to this tour in the description below, so if you want to take the tour, you can click there to sign up. If you don't want to take this kind of a tour where you're going around to all these different sites, you can easily visit each one of these sites on their own. In the description below, I'm linking to a Google map where I show you where each of these sites is located. I'm also linking to my page on the RomeWise website all about the Catacombs of Rome, so you can learn more about the different catacombs and how you can visit them. Our first stop on this tour, and a site you can easily visit on your own, is the Basilica of San Clemente. It's worth visiting the church all on its own, just on the ground floor level, but the church has actually more than one underground level, and we're going to be visiting those. All right, without further ado, let's go visit the Basilica of San Clemente.
But as you're going, changes already. Okay? Facade and columns, even the floor are telling us a complete different story.
The Basilica of San Clemente is an extraordinary example of Rome's layered history, built over the remains of earlier buildings dating back to the 1st century CE. One of my favorite things about this basilica is the stunning apse with mosaics from the 12th century. The apse depicts Christ on the cross, entwined with lush vines symbolizing life and resurrection. Arguably, one of the best things to do in this church, and the subject of today's tour, is to head down into the underground. You can purchase your tickets in the sacristy and bookshop.
Okay, so this is the best place to learn and understand how Rome is layered and how the city grew over the centuries. Okay.
The first underground level of the Basilica of San Clemente is the remains of a 4th century basilica, a once thriving Christian worship site. Our guide Marco is fantastic and really good at storytelling as he explains the history of San Clemente and his martyrdom. I find this level really spacious and well lit, and definitely not claustrophobic.
Another man, probably called the saint. We have the saint. He lived annis, the years 25, so this is a 25-year-old tomb. Well, man, I'm assuming. An interesting one here is this. Another good example of recycling, and he's showing you that at this point, being at the borders of town, along the Pomerium, at some point, along the sacred perimeter, we have all sorts of tombs. So when you read DM, you know this is a pagan tomb. D is manibus, the spirits of the underworld. But such a nice piece of marble, we'll be ashamed to leave it there. And so in Christian times, they decided to recycle, and now it became a Christian tomb with a Christian inscription. They just used the other side. Why not?
So if you look up Catacombs of San Clemente, this is the only part of San Clemente that has anything to do with actual catacombs. These lapidari, or tombstones, grave markers, came from the catacombs around 5th or 6th century, maybe. Here they're simply recycled. They're just here as markers on the wall. This is not where people are buried. The markers came from the catacombs. So the catacombs are not technically inside of this church. The most fascinating things to see in this church are, in general, this whole underground. And there's more. Let's keep going.
The second level of the underground goes back to the 1st century CE. The stairs down to the second level are pretty steep, but luckily there are handrails. One of the first things we see when we get down to the second layer is what many visitors hope to see when they visit this basilica, an underground Mithreum. A Mithreum was where practitioners of Mithraism once worshipped. Mithraism was always practiced underground. There are several Mithraea that you can see around Rome, but there are probably many more that we don't even know about. Here, under the Church of San Clemente, is one of the best examples of a Mithraeum, and it's really worth visiting the church to see this. This lower level also reveals the remains of Roman houses and buildings and even streets from as far back as the 1st century, around the same time period as the Mithraeum. It is a little bit more claustrophobic on this second layer underground, but it's still expansive and easy to explore, and I still think it's worth a visit.
Level in San Clemente Basilica, and maybe the priest Mululi was right, because now we're here and we see water. Now we say, is it smelly? Is it dirty? It's actually clear water and just a bit damp, but not particularly smelly, so it's not sewage water. It hasn't rained a lot recently, and so that this one runs all the time, no matter the season. And satisfaction allows water to clean. But the building is telling us probably a different story. You have like a herringbone floor, absolutely gorgeous here. This is the heavy-duty floor in ancient Rome, original. You have a barrel vault ceiling made in Roman concrete. So, if you make it sound more, I'm gonna call this the wine cellar. And this is where they kept the wine, the oil, the grain, and such.
All right, guys, we are here at the Catacombs of Domitilla, which I highly recommend. They're enormous. There's also a church inside of these catacombs where they hold services. So it is a really important holy site. Remember, to visit catacombs, all of the sites that we're visiting on today's video, you must be properly dressed in the same way that you would be to visit the Vatican, for example. So no bare knees, no bare shoulders, no midriffs, etc. And this goes for everyone, men, women, and children of all ages. At the catacombs in Rome, it is completely forbidden to take photos and video, so I won't be able to take photos and video on this tour, but when they have the Day of the Catacombs, sometimes in some of the catacombs they let you take photos. And on a visit a year or so ago, I went to the Catacombs of San Lorenzo, which I also recommend, and I was able to take some video there. So I'll show you video of those catacombs so you can see what it's like to visit the catacombs. These here at San Domitilla, I will not be able to take photos and video, so I'm just going to let the guide explain what we're about to see.
Domitilla, soon we're about to go downstairs underground to visit what? Ancient Christian cemeteries. Okay, so this is some of the first examples of where the community of Christians decided to have their own spot to bury people. Back in the days, you end up in a necropolis with all the rest, necropolis, the city of the dead. But here they want their own space to worship the dead, to wait for the resurrection. That's the whole point of building what? Underground tunnels with bodies taking a hole inside those tunnels, the loculus, the little places, and then seal the best way they possibly could with slabs of clay or marble, sometimes with ancient inscriptions. And some of the most famous are like the fish, which is the Ictis, which means Jesus Christ, the Son of God, the Savior. So this is one of the first ancient Christian symbols. Down below I want to tell you more about the chronology of those catacombs, but know that we're going to go around the second level today, so we're going 1,700 years ago. The 4th century AD, this is the level where most of the catacombs are usually in Rome you visit. Okay? But this one here starts at least a century before that. Good.
Okay, so we are going to be visiting the Capuchin Crypt next. This is the last stop on our visit today. Some time ago you were not allowed to take photos or video here, and now you are, so I'll be able to share with you on this video. Remember, this is another sacred site, so you have to be properly dressed to visit here. No bare knees, no bare shoulders.
Before visiting the crypt itself, you pass through a museum that details the life of St. Francis and the history of the Franciscan order. In the museum, you also learn the origin of the word Capuchin. The name Capuchin comes from the distinctive hoods or cappuccio worn by these friars. The Capuchin order was founded in the early 16th century as a reform movement within the Franciscan order. And the friars wore simple brown robes with long pointed hoods to emphasize their commitment to humility, poverty, and closeness to the poor. One of the highlights in the museum is a striking painting attributed to Caravaggio, St. Francis in Meditation. This powerful memento mori scene, showing the saint contemplating a skull, serves as a reminder of the fragility of life and the inevitability of death. The Capuchin Crypt is an extraordinary and eerie sight where the bones of around 3,700 Capuchin friars are arranged in intricate designs across the walls and ceilings of several small chapels. The reason these chapels are decorated with bones dates back to the 17th century, when the friars began using bones from their deceased brethren to remind the living of the inevitability of death, a central theme in their spiritual philosophy. This practice reflects the Capuchin values of humility and the transient nature of earthly life. After you enter the first crypt, you're greeted by a haunting message displayed on a placard in 5 languages. What you are now, we used to be. What we are now, you will be. This stark reminder underscores the Capuchins' emphasis on death as a natural part of life, and serves as a powerful memento mori, urging visitors to reflect on their own mortality.
So here you have what? Underlining the growing vault architecture, you have these like Joe moment here, literally. And why are they up there? Because they're pretty. And that's the only reason. In the middle of the canopy, which is done with 2 sacrum bones and arm bones and shoulder blades. Any idea what they're trying to depict?
Looks like an hourglass.
It is. Well done. This is an hourglass with wings. What does it mean, an hourglass with wings? Any idea?
Time flying, no?
Tempus fugit, time flies. Literally, they are mentioning once again that our time here is limited, and you can see that the sand has all gone down, meaning they painted on white the top one. It's one of my favorites because it's very complicated and ornate. So you have the Sacred Heart of Christ, the flame, and the crown of thorns right on top.
Adding to the crypt's significance, the soil inside the chapels is said to have been brought from Jerusalem. I think the site is beautiful and amazing and thought-provoking, but it may not be for everyone.
So what did you guys think? Have you visited these sites? Are you planning to visit these sites when you come to Rome? Drop me a line in the comments below. I would love to hear from you. And if you want to know more about Via Veneto, right where I'm standing, check out my dedicated video. And for more unusual things to do in Rome, check out my playlist right here.